too is that we have raven and eagle as our two main crests. The tribe is split into two halves. And then within each eagle or raven, you have all these sub-clan groups. And so mine is the killer whale. And I'm an eagle. And because it's matrilineal society, it comes from my mother's side. So on to the next sort of, so now I'm just going to show you a few things of, different techniques and, again, different kinds of effects that I've developed for showcasing the Northwest Coast stuff. And again, just because of, getting kind of bored and you have to reinvent yourself every couple of years and not do the same thing over and over. But I am lucky because I have a lot of source material for inspiration. So I kind of run, the gamut of doing things that are very traditional, and then sometimes I'll do things that are more abstract, kind of playing with, sometimes they have a very specific cultural reference in terms of form, and then sometimes I'll take an aspect and I'll just kind of really abstract it and reduce it down to some basic elements. And nothing really beats looking at these pieces in person, but sometimes these detail shots can be really kind of interesting. Since I didn't go to school for art, and I mentioned my, kind of early exploration in all kinds of different kinds of spiritual and philosophical ideas, reading about the surrealists, kind of brought it all back because they talked about having a strong appreciation for native art, African art, oceanic art, indigenous art from all around the world. And so there was a scholar that I read. It was a native scholar, Renard Strickland, who wrote that it was ironic that it was the modernists to force us to look at the primitive and appreciate differing levels of reality. So, here's a Picasso juxtaposed with a Northwest Coast mask. There's a Picasso juxtaposed with an African sculpture. So this whole, brought me around to learning about the genre of primitivism. And for me, there was a lot of rich dialogue there because talking about these modernists that were looking at this older artwork and then doing things that were almost, appropriating it in a lot of ways. And I think it was a real natural thing, but some of the primitivism artists kind of felt as though that their work was disempowered because it was being created for gallery commerce, and whereas the older materials that from the cultural groups were made for a specific reason. They're made to iterate man's connection to the cosmos and beyond, and so the elements of the natural world and these symbols. So here's like my little take on, this is my little Picasso, Northwest Coast Picasso, and then there's what's this guy? Oh, Brancusi, right? So this is like my little take on that. And so playing with these abstractions now, and that was very often done in Northwest Coast art, where you could reduce the elements down to these very simple elements and create something new. So this is a raven and an eagle. The top beak is the eagle, and the bottom beak is the raven, and they share an eye. This is a mosquito, the origin of mosquitoes. This is a little kind of, I call this hyacinth medicine amulet. So again, sometimes these things are inspired by, this is inspired by a feather. I call this one red feather. Here you have like an eagle and a raven, kind of. So to me, it's almost like a Noguchi, right? It's almost something, or a Henry Moore or something, but then yet it's ornamented with Northwest Coast. And this is like a mussel shell sculpture. And I call this one Invocator of Hidden Spirits, kind of like a shaman theme. Kind of an abstracted killer whale. So anyway, that's sometimes I'm just creating things just that don't have a specific symbolism behind it, but more just decorative. How am I doing on time here? So I've been involved with these indigenous artist gatherings, and this is a very interesting component of how I've evolved as a indigenous artist, I think. So these gatherings have been in various places in Hawaii, New Zealand, up in the States, and they usually have Maori and Pacific Islanders, perhaps, so this was a piece I did, Journey to Aotearoa, which is the Maori name for New Zealand, you probably know. So when I first started going to New Zealand, I found, an incredible experience. Of course, they're incredibly empowered people. This is my best, this is my Maori war face right there. They're trying to teach us how to be fierce. But of course, it was really incredible getting to go and meet with these kinds of guys. Because they have, just incredible people. Can't say enough about them. So I took it pretty seriously. I committed and got a Mocha. And I said, so what would you give a guy like me? I don't want to be culturally inappropriate, but, something to do with like fire or the sun or something, because I'm a glass blower. And I said, oh yeah, that'd be easy. That'd be like Ru'a Moko. Ru'a Moko would be the god of volcano and earthquakes. And he said, oh, that sounds good. That'd be for me, because I think we always think of the glass as the lava. Sometimes glass blowers say, work in the hot lava. And so we did this Ru'a Mocha, and I was showing it off to my friends here with my buddy Lewis, and I said, yeah, what was this guy's name? Ru'a Mocha. Yeah, he's a god. Yeah, he's a god. He's kind of a mama's boy. And, he's always threatening to shake the earth or blow up a mountain, and his mom's always trying to calm him down. It's like, oh man, okay. It's like, that's indigenous humor for you. So I'm going to blast through these last few. I like to show lots of images, and I've been rambling on here because I forgot my notes. But anyway, nap time begins in 5 minutes. This is the work I did with Lewis Gardner. This is Maori jade carver. We conjoined our mediums. And, we compared stories, cultural stories. This is the salmon mother myth. And, Lewis works with large pieces of jade, and so it's very spectacular. The combination was pretty neat. This is me and Dante Marioni. We were prompted by our gallery to try to develop some collaborative work together, and so we did. And that's been a lot of fun working with him, because after 35 years, we thought, well, we'd never really made pieces where we put both of our names on. And so this was kind of fun, because you're always discovering something new and working collaboratively with other artists. This was pretty groundbreaking for the native art world. This actually kind of helped cross the material of glass into the the native art world. This is Tammy Garcia's Santa Clara Pueblo potter, and I knew that her work would be spectacular, and my love of the classical vessel. But based on the popularity of her work, we sold the show out like in half an hour, because it also helped gain a little bit of a foothold in terms of the people that felt that glass is a non-traditional medium for Native American art, indigenous art. But I always contend that the materials that we use for our indigenous art is becoming increasingly rare. Like in the Northwest, it's the big cedar trees, and we don't have access to anymore. So you'll see, for the needs of the people to keep these stories and symbols alive, you're going to find new materials are being adopted. Glass is just one of them. It could be any other material in the future, and I hope that the next generation will discover different ways of working. Joe David, of course, one of my best bros, and one of my best. We do a lot of great work together. I get to work with people like this guy. Buffalo Man, he's kind of a performance artist, and he wanders the country and has all kinds of adventures. This is reflective of Marcus Hammerman's mound builder culture. So these are the kinds of things we made, and so each time I'm trying to help cross somebody over into the glass world, give them an experience, show them what's possible with glass. There's some monumental works. These are larger boxes. They're quite heavy and big. This is a copper form. It maybe looks like a shield, but it's just mostly denotes the high status of a chief individual. This is a full-scale canoe paddle. It was cast glass. The big triptych I did for the Museum of Glass. And this was the big one that I did. I don't have a full-size shot of it. It's 7.5 feet tall. The story about my great-grandmother who had a pet grizzly bear as a child. This is my team as we were moving out into this bigger space here. Looks so nice and clean. It's all cluttered up now and filled up with all kinds of stuff. But I have a little hot shop. This is pretty much how I get all of the designs into the glass is sandblasting. Here we're working on the basket texture making. And here's my current band, A Little Big Band. It's a Native American funk band. We have it come out. It's a very theatrical performance art kind of a group. Native American storytellers and dancers, and and it's a multi-ethnic group. There's our token white guy. This is Swill Canham. He's the Vile Indian. James Luna is a performance artist out of Southern California. So it's quite fun. 3-ring circus. So now I'm sort of getting back into my music. I met this guy who some of you might know is the keyboard player for Parliament Funkadelic, Bernie Worrell. He came out and he played a party, my 50th birthday party, and then he expressed some interest in working with me on some of my music, and so we're taking the traditional folk music from Alaska, and we're creating sort of spontaneous funk jazz interpretations, and it's been an incredible experience. We have about 5 hours worth of music recorded, and we're going to start to release. This guy Skarek is an amazing avant-garde saxophone player, and Stanton Moore is out of New Orleans, plays in a New Orleans funk band called Galactic. This is one of my collaborators here, Captain Rob. He's Blackfoot native. So, yeah. Anyway, this is my real, and this is going to be an exploration of, again, spoken word and storytelling and mythology and all in contemporary music. It was sort of a funk soul kind of twist. So there you go. Thanks so much for coming and seeing the presentation.
Thanks very much. There might be some questions. You okay to hang out for a bit?
Oh, sure, yeah. Right.
So thanks very much, Preston. I have to talk into the thing, Story full of stories. Great to see and hear. And so if anybody's got any questions, well, wait a minute. There's a few questions coming up, so just give them a second. And then we'll get the questions. Do we have to hand the microphone around? No, we're going to repeat the questions.
Repeat the question, okay. Okay, we'll start here.
Sandy Benjamin from Melbourne.
Sandy.
I know your work, Preston.
Yeah.
But to see a whole lot of it very large on screen, the emotional response to the criteria of beauty, overwhelming beauty is the first. If we step back from that and use some of your work of Indigenous, and then you go into abstract, and then you go to collaboration, could I add the word bastardisation, but not in judgment, okay? Not in judgment. And I know we're going to do a lot of cross-cultural stuff today, and we have guests from other cultures. It's what I'm struggling with at the moment. I'm wondering if you would say something about what's happening with you and how you hold your line.
Yeah. I guess, so yeah, the question was sort of like, where do I draw the line with what I do? Is it diluting the cultural experience? Well, I like to say that, my point about materials is very relevant, I think, and the needs of the people are going to be reflected. To keep the symbols and stories alive in one fashion or another, you're going to find other materials are being adopted. And also the fact is that an anthropologist might want to, I call it sometimes the cultural corral. It's like, well, it's contemporary, so it doesn't quite fit in, let's put that over here. The fact is that we as Native people, Indigenous people, are declaring who we are and what we're doing. The glass movement, the studio glass movement is 50 years old. We never, before 50 years, the average person didn't have access to glass. And so now I know some, probably the longest working Native American glass worker that I know, he's been probably doing it 40 years, and I've almost been doing it 35 years. So I'm just, I'm going to say that I have an opportunity to attract attention by what I'm doing. My method is going to be the message and show the symbolism. Yes, I dabble and play and abstract and do that, but what I'm doing now is I'm getting into the mythologies, and I'm getting into the specific universal nature of it. You talk about the raven story. You talk about the woman becomes pregnant. She doesn't have a husband. What do we call that? Immaculate conception. the world is in darkness, and who brings us the light? And the raven brings the light, just like Jesus is the light of the world, all that stuff. So I don't see it as mutually, it's not excluding anybody. It's all a universal metaphor. So I just see it as an opportunity, and that's what I'm trying to develop in a nutshell.
Let's go here. Tom took last.
You told us about your experience, you're telling us about your experience in Sweat Lodge, and I feel like you lost the track of the story as you were getting mystic. I'm not quite sure whether you did want to tell us, or you to be on something else, or if you're happy to take a chat there or not.
Well, the Sweat Lodge for me, again, as I mentioned, I wasn't raised with any religious instruction. I found myself really open to it, but it was also because of all the other aspects that I had sort of dabbled in, the Aikido, the martial arts, and sort of Buddhist philosophies and things. And I ended up responding to it in such a way that it connected with me. It resonated with me on some level. So I was able to, and what does it mean? The fact is that the Native Americans are not out there actively recruiting people or going on a crusade to, change people's perspectives and force them to do that. But the ceremony itself is basically a natural, process that has been protected and handed down through generations, and it was something that is a way to a spiritual understanding. And so sometimes when I'm in the Sweat Lodge, I'm wondering, what is this? How is what we're doing here? How is it benefiting everybody else? And at one point, I was able to answer it on one level to say that it's personal growth. It challenges you physically and mentally, but it also in the idea of trying to become the best human being that you can become. And so by doing that, hopefully, you're able to serve as an example. I don't know, I'm being presumptuous, but you try to be the best person that you can be, and that's a way to developing, because it's about humble. It's about being humble, first and foremost. And so that's what it meant to me, the Sweat Lodge.
That first experience that you had about,
Mm-hmm.
that was the most what was that experience like before you were there?
Well, you're in the Sweat Lodge?
You were in that particular...
Oh, yeah. No, I can't tell you. No, but it's basically you bring these, you're building this giant bonfire with these hot rocks, and then you bring it into the little hut, and then you pour water on them, and it creates, a hot vapor steam. But, the rocks themselves are volcanic rocks, from, they call them the grandfather stones, but they're from the earth, womb of the earth. So it's just a matter of taking the energy from the trees, which was, the sun's energy creates these trees to grow. There's energy stored in them. The energy is burned and transferred into the rocks, and the rocks are brought into the lodge. So this whole transfer of energy and force, and then it connects you with the ancestor spirits, in a nutshell. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a question? Oh, do we? Okay, that's it for the questions, but Preston's going to be around for a while, I hope. I've got a couple of announcements, and there's been a slight... well, anyway, first, thanks very much, Preston. I'm sure there are 1,000 more questions because there's so much to process with that kind of a story for us, I think, and we're very grateful for you sharing it. Thanks. Anyway, it's been a slight program change. The Jeremy is going to be on at 12:45, 50 minutes later here in the Mercury Cinema. Now there's a bit of a break, cup of tea or coffee outside, and Chris Blade is going to be at 10:15. Chris Blade's going to be talking about the National Glass Centre in Sunderland and making an announcement about a new something or other. But anyway, it's the Iris Cinema is just over behind if you want to hear Chris Blade talk. Otherwise, we'll see you back here soon. Okay, thanks a lot.
Nice job.